You want a hug? You want a hug
I
first?
do.
Okay.
I want a Republican hug.
A Republican, an Uncle Sam hug.
Time for another edition of Change My Mind, where we sit down for hopefully productive conversations on controversial topics and hear from you in the comments section. Now, sometimes it's hard to find voices of opposition willing to engage in conversation, so this week we reserved a booth at the Texas State Democratic Convention. And that sets the stage for this edition's premise: America is superior to all other countries. Change my mind. We also saw some familiar faces who became friends, and they might surprise you.
Hey Danielle, how are you? Good to see you, Danielle.
You've got it.
I don't look as polished as you. I'll give you that right away.
I've already had my chance at your table.
That's-
I'm going to give others a chance to
I
speak.
appreciate it.
Glad to see you, Danielle. Now, for this topic, this isn't just lip service. I genuinely believe the United States to be the greatest country on earth. What you're about to see are three people who tried to change my mind.
What was your name?
Marilyn Mays.
Marilyn Mays. Stephen Kreider, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Stephen.
So I just want to make sure that, just to recap here, I said I believe the United States is still the greatest country in the world, superior to all other countries, in my opinion. You're welcome to change my mind. And you said last week, maybe, but this week, an all-time low. What do you mean?
This week, last week, and even this week, we're at an all-time low.
Okay.
You know, I'm just so exhausted over these children, these toddlers being taken.
Yeah.
And I need you to help me understand why we would take babies and toddlers, because in the work I do, it looks to me like since the Russians won't give us babies, they're going to take the little children that just came here and adopt them out.
Since the who won't give us babies?
Russians. You know,
Oh.
the deal fell through in Trump Towers.
That's what you think this is about. That's a joke.
Yeah, right.
Well, let me ask this before we get, because you're obviously aware of Trump's executive order now.
I am.
Okay, so now they're not going to be separated. They're going to be detained together. So is that progress?
As of this morning, they still are.
Well, yeah, it takes a
Because
while,
they're-
but
yeah,
are you
and
happier
plus
about
the
that?
loopholes. I was really happy about it, and then when I saw the loophole that right after, you know, that last paragraph at the very end, not paragraph, the last phrase at the very end, and I went, same stuff, different day.
Yeah,
And then Melania's jacket.
yeah. Well, let me ask you
on,
though.
man.
Hold on a second. So this has been a week that obviously you disagree with some, the Obama and Clinton
Yes.
policies, the Flores to
Yeah.
consent policy. So your problem isn't with Trump; it's with the Clintons and Obamas. But let me ask you this: does that change? Do you disagree with the premise that the United States is the greatest country in the world, that it's superior to all other countries, or is it just that you're a little worn down from the news week?
I think we're falling in stature. I think that, we've been I've been upset since G7, okay? I've been falling apart since G7, because how would we do our allies like that? This man is just dismantling America, the respect that we have. I can remember last year and the year before going on cruises and Pete just having to apologize for this country. I've never had to apologize for my country. I'm a veteran. I don't understand.
Thank you for your
that.
service.
And it's like I'm up here having to apologize
For what?
because people say, for Trump,
How so?
because he's a humiliation, he's an embarrassment. He doesn't know the King's English.
Okay.
He cannot hold a decent conversation. I don't believe he went to Wharton School of Business. I think somebody else took his test. He is ignorant. Because,
Okay.
a lot of people would send folk to take their test back in the day.
Yeah,
Okay?
I had a guy who actually, he would do that when he would weigh in for wrestling practice. He had a
Uh-huh.
twin brother, and his brother would weigh in. But let me ask you, I get that you're not a fan of Donald Trump, and there are a lot of things that I'm not a fan of his either, but I probably support more policies of his than you do, but not all of them. But again, I want to go back to the premise today is the United States is the greatest country in the world. What do you apologize to people for? How do you believe we're inferior to other countries, or what country do you believe is better than the United States?
I feel like Great Britain and France and Canada, I feel like those countries are are taking the high road. And I feel like everything I believed in is slipping away from me. And I've just been distraught these past 2 weeks. But everything I believed in, when I first fell apart, is the night when I realized about 8 o'clock that evening that Trump was going to win. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna work with him, because he's my commander in chief. I'm gonna try to get with him.
I appreciate that.
But then he just kept being more and more ignorant.
May I stop you for a moment?
Yes.
Really quickly, sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure that this
Yeah.
thing keeps falling off. If you see it fall.
Don't let your stuff
I
fall
know,
off.
you don't want to see what's under here.
we don't wanna
No
see it.
jawline. So you mentioned Canada, Britain, and France. So you believe they're better than the United States. Let me ask you this. You said everything you believe in is disappearing. You're a veteran.
Yes.
Did you serve to protect freedom of speech?
I did.
So what about the fact that those countries don't have freedom of speech? Only the United States does.
But you know what? That's not what I see right now. You only get caught up in what you see.
No. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter what you see as far as...
when I was there.
Well, no, but
I was
we have it
speaking all over the place.
constitutionally enshrined here.
Yeah.
In Canada, the UK,
Yeah.
France, people are jailed for speech, for offensive things,
Okay.
or fined. That doesn't happen in the United States. We have a constitutional right to freedom of speech. They don't. So wouldn't you say that the United States, certainly as a veteran, if you were serving to protect freedom of speech, is superior to those countries, if only because we're the only country with freedom of speech?
But why I'm so distraught, it looks like we're getting ready to lose it. I mean, anyway, he's playing footsie with Kim and Putin, and applauding Kim for wiping out 3 generals the day before he came, and his people sit up. When I see that, I get nervous because it looks like if nobody puts that dude in check, we're gonna lose everything. And I'm just sad.
Well, I understand that you're sad, and I'm sorry. I don't like to see anyone sad that you're feeling this way. But
sad.
I'm hearing a lot of how you feel, but I don't think that's really objective reality. Freedom of speech is actually not being eroded here like it is.
think not?
No, not unless the Democrats would have their way. They support hate speech laws. Republicans are the ones who've defended against it. On campus, they're the ones banning points of view.
Because the kind of
Well, you might need to put some conservative sites in your bookmark so you can read both sides, because I'm an ardent defender of freedom of speech. And as a matter of fact, I've had people who try to silence me, people here I feel like we've had a good conversation.
Yeah.
People here at this very convention who threatened to firebomb me, slash my tires, just for
Why
me
would they
speaking
do
out.
that?
Because they're liberals.
I'm a liberal. I would never do that to you.
Well, then take it up with them.
I would never do that to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
See, we're more closer friends than me and them.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everybody has a right to say what they want to say, but it's like when you start being offensive and hurting people, that's when I start getting nervous. But
it's still protected.
It's
That's
still
why.
protect-
That's
it's
what.
still protected.
Just not in the countries you mentioned.
It's still protected, and so it's like everything I believed in is slipping away.
But would you say that this is some progress in our conversation? It seems to me, and I'm not suggesting at all that you're ignorant. I'm Canadian,
But
so I'm
you're
very
a
aware of
human,
Canadian.
though.
No, but the point is, you suggested these other countries. It doesn't seem like you were totally aware that they don't have freedom of speech.
I wasn't.
So does that change your opinion?
No.
You'd want to live in you think a country with no freedom of speech is superior to the United States? See, that would be just where we disagree. I think they're inferior
Yeah.
with no freedom of speech.
I just think that we have a pig for a president, and he's making us look bad all over the world. He's ignorant, and I just wish that he would, I know he is who he is, and he deserves to be who he is. But it just is so, everything that I thought of that a president ought to be, he's not. And he's so rude and crude around the edges, and it's
Well, I'll tell you what,
embarrassing.
and I say this respectfully because I still respect him as a president.
I do.
But for me, I felt that way about President Barack Obama. I felt as though...
You didn't think he was born in wherever that was Trump lied about, did you?
What was that? No, I don't think he was born
Okay.
in Kenya. No.
Okay.
I just think he was a terrible president. But I respect the office, and I respect that you feel that
He
way.
knew the King's English, and he knew the law. This dude don't know nothing. I mean, I don't even think he's a good businessman because
we
he
have-
filed bankruptcy.
We have
7
record low
7
unemployment,
times.
record high job participation.
That's very nice.
We're
but
doing
what are
very well.
wages? What are wages?
They're doing really well. We have the
Yeah.
highest. As a matter of fact, are you surprised to learn that the United States has the highest wages in the world? Average income?
I'm not surprised about that.
Okay, so that's a
I'm
good
not
thing.
surprised about that, and that's a very good thing, and I'm happy about that. But my thing is, okay, Trump, you didn't marry American. Trump, you didn't. You've got all those immigrants working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people that work for Trump.
Yeah, but there's a difference between legal and illegal immigrants. But
I know it, but what about Americans? I mean, you so pro-American. Let's see Americans with most of these jobs, and I know it's all these jobs that Americans don't want to do. I know that. I get that,
Okay.
but it's just that
Well,
I'm just.
I appreciate you taking that. I'm sorry to see you sad. Can I give you one piece of advice? Don't place so much credence in one man. You know what I mean? You're responsible for your own happiness. It's not the state.
No.
It's not the government. Do you have a family?
You just destroyed everything that I thought
do you have
my
a family?
country was. I love my folks.
Do you have a good family?
Yes.
Focus on your family and focus on your health. I do think, even though I didn't like Barack Obama, I did notice a lot of people on the right were so miserable and they thought everything was over. Listen, it's one man. We have safeguards in this country.
It's one man and the Freedom Caucus.
But
It's
my
like-
point
it's
is,
so
you can
much
still choose to be
hate.
happy. I don't hate you.
I don't hate you.
And I'm a conservative Republican.
And I'm very happy to meet somebody like you. And some of my good friends are Republicans, you know?
Yeah.
And we agree to disagree. It's just that this was a bad 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can understand how it would be rough for you.
Just, you know, babies, you know, the work I do, I represent children as their guardian.
Mm-hmm.
And I see what it does when you move a child. And I know the parents are at fault for bringing them here. And I know that people don't want to invest.
And Clinton for signing the policy, and
Yeah.
Obama then for doubling back and not enforcing it.
Exactly. And so I realized that if you got to pay to play in the world, and sometimes you got to invest money in these other countries to keep them at home. And I know that that's a problem, okay? That's the first thing I learned in political science, that sometimes you got to pay to play. And if you're not willing to invest in keeping those folk at home, and that's another monster, because if we get off into that, our soldiers get killed, and it's another big old mess. So I'm just sad.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, thank you for taking. Hey, you want a hug? You want a hug
I
first?
do. I want a Republican hug.
A Republican, an Uncle Sam hug. Well, thank you so much for
I'm
taking
gonna
that.
speak well of. Well, I'm gonna speak well of you.
Me, that's okay. Hey, listen, I get it. There are a lot of Republicans who are jerks, but I appreciate you taking the
But
time.
you're a good Republican. I'm pleased to have
I'm
met
conservative, libertarian conservative.
You. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
if you see someone trying to firebomb this booth, tell them to stop.
I'm gonna tell them don't do it because you're a reasonable man.
Thank you
okay?
very much. I
And
appreciate
I don't
it.
believe you've lied about anything.
I try
And
not to.
Trump is a liar. My God.
Well, I think
Why
that's
is he lying?
politicians in
You know,
general.
I know, but not every other word. Come on, man. Help me with that. I pray for
I
him.
can't.
I even pray for him.
I appreciate that.
I pray for him every day.
You know what? I pray
And
for
I
him,
want
and
him
I
to
prayed
be
for
like
Barack
me.
Obama as well. I think we
don't
share a lot
want
of
him-
common ground.
I don't want him to be like me. I pray for him to be who he is, but he's just so destructive in my eyes. And I realized that we were raised under different circumstances. You know, we come from a different world. But I just
Okay. Well,
just
thank
wish
you.
he could be more like Jeb Bush. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think Jeb Bush wishes he could be more like
I
Jeb
know.
Bush. He's such a wiener. But all right. Well, thank you.
I mean, my Republican didn't win, okay,
Yeah.
but that's not why I'm upset. You know,
Right. I
my
hear you.
Republican didn't win.
Well,
so.
thank you. I don't want to keep you all down. We have to keep the chair for other people. But
keep
thank
the
you so
chair
much for
for
taking the
other
time.
people.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a good conservative.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being so pleasant and respectful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not so sad.
Is this yours or is this ours? This is ours?
I hope that's y'all.
Okay, it's ours. Thank you. Apologies. Thank you so. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye. That was great. What was your name, by the way?
Diane Martin.
I'm Stephen.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
Stephen.
Nice to
I
meet
hope
you,
you are a
Diane.
Democrat.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm a Canadian American dual citizen conservative libertarian, to be specific. Yeah.
this country has just gone down the drain.
How so?
Well, look what's happening. Donald Trump is the most despicable. I don't even have words or adjectives to describe this man and to see what he's done. And knowing what I came from and how I saw my country deteriorate under corrupt African rule, which it did, unfortunately. I mean, there's no getting away from it.
Oh, no,
South
I understand.
Africans are leaving in their droves.
It's
In
still
their
terrible today
droves.
with their
I know
laws
what
and
they're
farmers.
doing- what they're doing to the farmers. And, you know, I see it's not only so much the farmers, it's just the whole infrastructure of the country has disintegrated. And my family all live there.
Sure.
I've lived here for 20 years and I've had reasonable opportunities. You know, my daughter's been able to go to college, which she would have done in South Africa anyhow. I cannot begin to tell you how angry I am with white, spineless Republicans who are not even looking at the other side of the slate and are now
Well, that's why I'm here.
condoning what this man is doing. Condoning it. I mean, who tears children apart?
Well, first off, do you disagree with the fundamental premise that the United States is the best country in the world?
No.
You don't disagree with that?
I disagree with it, yes.
Okay, so what examples of countries would you say are superior to the United States? I guess to start, before we get to how much you dislike Trump, and I understand that.
Korea, they've got
South Korea?
South Korea, they've got an incredible standard of education, the highest in the world. We have one of the lowest standards of education.
We don't have a great public education system. I'd agree.
Terrible.
You got one moment. Hey, Jared. Let me know. You need to be the one to let me know when. Okay, sorry.
And
okay, so South Korea.
Okay, that's one issue is education. The other thing that I feel very, very angry about at the moment, but it's been there always in this country. There's a lot of hatred and divisiveness that Trump literally scratched the surface of. It's always been there because I've felt it as an immigrant. People have told me to go back to South Africa if I didn't like it here. So it's not the greatest country in the world.
Well, those are individual examples. They're anecdotal. People being rude.
But
I mean, my
it's
mom's
not-
French Canadian.
Yes.
I'm Canadian. Was raised in Canada my whole life, so dual citizen. That doesn't change the empirical data. The evidence as far as now. Let me sort of present. Let me present why I think it's the greatest country in the world. Is that freedom, equal opportunity, the ability to pursue happiness.
Equal opportunity.
And in South Korea, do they have freedom? What's free speech like in South Korea?
They're allowed to speak freely. And what about Europe? Europe, a country like Holland, I've lived in a lot of places.
Freedom of speech doesn't exist in those countries.
In Holland,
It is not constitutionally enshrined.
Maybe
There are
it's
hate
not
speech laws where you can be jailed or fined for saying something offensive. In every country you've mentioned, they do not have freedom of
do you
speech.
think hate speech crimes are actually acceptable?
I think that freedom of speech, the First Amendment, is to defend precisely offensive
But
speech.
it's not happening here now
What's not happening here now?
because we are not allowed to speak out, and we're attacked, and the press is attacked for being fake news. Mm-hmm. So is that total freedom of speech? No, it's not.
Sure. I'm talking about people being fined or put in jail by the government for speaking out
Well,
offensively.
It could get to that point. It could get
But we
to that point.
aren't, and they are at those other countries you've mentioned.
Well,
Is that not important?
I don't think that happens. It doesn't happen in South Africa. It certainly doesn't happen in South Africa. You can say what you like now, and it's actually totally acceptable.
So in South Africa, freedom of speech is a constitutionally enshrined right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has certainly
not.
been. How do you know?
It's not a constitutionally enshrined right in
Maybe
South
we
Africa.
don't have a constitution that follows what the American Constitution does, but basically people can speak out. I worked in the
I'm not
State
talking about
Department.
basically. I'm talking in Canada. Basically, people could speak out until they started saying the wrong thing. And here's the thing: I want you to be able to speak out and say whatever you want about President Trump. I think
not
I
only Trump.
absolutely
I don't
whatever you want to
it's
say. My
just
point is,
about
I would
people
protect
in this
your right
country.
to say anything.
Yeah.
And so these other
Yes.
countries that you named, they don't have the same constitutional freedoms that we have.
But is our Constitution such a great Constitution?
Yes.
I'm glad you think so.
Well, if you don't think
The
so,
Second Amendment, I think, is the most archaic and the most ridiculous part of a constitution that went back to the 18th, 17th century.
what are gun laws like in South Africa?
Very strict. And you know
No
why?
gun crime, right?
Very little compared to what's going on here. Very little.
Very little crime
There's
in
no-
South Africa
no,
compared
there-
to the United States?
There's no mass shooting. People do not go into schools and kill students. It's never happened, okay? It may be one-on-one, and it's happening, yes, with the farmers, but it's gangs. It's gangs
Crime
that
is
do
far
it.
greater in South Africa, and you also can't protect
Oh,
yourself
no,
against
it's
tyrannical
not.
governments. So
No,
I would
it's
actually
not.
argue that South Africa is a precise reason for the Second Amendment, so that we don't have a government like South Africa, as you just mentioned. But
Well, you know-
I appreciate you taking the I don't think we're going to find a ton of common ground there if you don't like the Constitution, but
I don't.
sounds to me like you might prefer these countries.
I would. I actually am having second thoughts about, I've been here 20 years, and I'm having second thoughts about living here anymore.
Oh, I wouldn't discourage you from doing that. That's not me saying get out. That's me
No.
saying if you think that they're
I
better
know,
countries
exactly.
and you're not a supporter of the First or
No,
Second Amendment,
I'm not.
you might be happier in one of these other countries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Now, your premise is America is superior to any other country.
Yes, could you please, move
sure.
your chair in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let me give you my premise. I believe, it's
Okay,
the
go
best,
ahead.
best country in the world. Yeah, that's pretty simple. I believe it's the greatest country in the world.
Okay.
And I know you said you thought you really changed my mind.
Well, I don't think the United States is the best or greatest country in the world.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of very good countries to live in, and I would mention the ones in Europe, maybe Japan, I think Japan's a good country. Singapore is a good country. Australia, Canada. A lot of these are Anglo countries, obviously,
Yeah.
because they all have the benefits of the British history.
Sure.
Now, let me get to specifics. Our country is perhaps the most capitalist or free enterprise country on the planet.
Okay.
And I think that's a major problem
Okay.
for this reason. To survive, free enterprise companies have to continue to grow. They're always competing.
Sure.
And if they don't grow, they will lose market share to other companies, and they will then.
You came here so gung ho, saying you're going to change my mind.
Yeah, I guess I'm not doing it very well, am
I've not
I?
interrupted you or anything.
Okay,
I'm
no,
just
you
trying to make
haven't.
Sure you have.
You haven't. There's no water in here for me.
Sorry. Just because it's a legal thing where if I give you water and then you go and say, "Oh, I feel faint."
Okay, got it.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we have a problem with that because as they lose their business in competition, they will eventually go bankrupt, and that company will then end, and they will lose. All the employees will lose their jobs.
Okay.
And have to fend for themselves. Now that's one problem. The other problem is that as the population of the Earth increases, which it has been doing, corporations have to continue to grow to keep market share, to keep the steady market share, because the market share is going up, population's increasing, so their consumers are increasing. And when that happens, they use more and more resources.
Okay.
And a lot of resources are in short supply. And more resources will continue to disappear. Now,
You believe this is exclusive to the United States?
No, but I think the United States is one of the worst offenders. Now, there's probably a worse offender. That's China.
Right.
In that respect.
Yeah.
They're using resources at an enormous rate.
But you named some countries. You said in Europe, Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Canada.
Would you put that at the top of your list?
I would put it at least even with the U.S., maybe better. I would just European countries, Germany, France.
So any countries that you would say are superior to the United States, since my premise is
Possibly superior, but at least equal.
Okay.
And if they're equal, that negates your proposition, which America is the greatest or the best.
okay. What's that? No. Okay. Sorry, my producer's looking at me here. Do they have the same kinds of freedoms in those countries?
Yes, they are representative democracies, like our country. Many people consider representative democracy to be the best.
What about freedom of speech?
Yes, of course.
No, they don't.
They don't.
They don't.
Japan, Great Britain,
Nope.
Canada.
Nope.
Are you sure about that?
It is not
How
a
about
constitution.
Scandinavia, Norway, Finland.
Many of these. By the way, I notice you're mentioning very homogenous countries, so not a big fan of diversity, I'm guessing.
Yes, nice. That's true. They are.
But no, let me
they
clarify.
have-
No, it's not a protected right in Canada, in Japan, certainly not in Europe. You can be jailed, fined, or many people are for saying something offensive. So to me, right away, before we get to the economics of it, right, we're the number one economy, we have the highest wage in the industrialized world. Before we get to that, number one I told you on my list was freedom. Freedom, equal opportunity, pursuit of happiness. Freedom of speech doesn't exist in any of those countries. And that's because that was a unique founding of our country. That's a big part of why I believe we're superior to those countries.
I'm not sure I believe that. I think
absolutely true.
some of those countries don't have freedom of speech in a constitution, but they have laws protecting speech.
No, they don't. People are jailed and fined all the time. In Canada, for example, we've had comedian Mike Ward on our show, who was put before Human Rights Tribunal for a joke. Stephen Boisson, a pastor who was fined and jailed. You have a man who was jailed in the UK for doing a karaoke version of Kung Fu Fighting and was considered racist. You have Dank Dog, the pug, who was taught to do a Nazi salute as a joke. There, the list goes on and on. And I feel like giving you enough specifics.
Nazi salutes and Nazis.
A pug
Yeah,
did a little Nazi salute.
Yeah, or the pug.
Yeah.
Anything
Count
dealing with
Dankula.
Nazis is certainly banned in Germany and Austria, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm aware of
This
that.
was in the UK.
And that is
It was a man whose dog did the Nazi salute, which, let's admit, listen, I hate Nazis. That's kind of funny for a pug who did it while watching the show.
So-
And this man was put before a trial. The point is, freedom of speech doesn't exist in those countries. Does that change your opinion at all?
Well, again, you're making a statement that I'm not sure of. I know that in Germany and Austria, having anything to do with Nazis, such as insignia or songs, they can't sing the Horst Wessel song in Germany, for
Right.
instance. So there are restrictions on speech in those countries, and that means they're not as free as the U.S. where you can go out and sing the Horse Vessel song if you want and things like that. Of course, I would never do that.
No, I would never
hate
do that,
Nazis,
but do you
yeah.
support their right to do it?
Of course.
Okay.
That's if I didn't realize other countries. What about blasphemy? We can be blasphemous in this country.
Yes.
Isn't blasphemy legal in Britain and
Well, hold on a second.
Canada? And
I have no idea if blasphemy specifically is allowed. I know that it's actually a hate crime to speak out against the Quran and specifically Muslims in Canada, and that's a real problem.
I would never say they're better countries than the U.S.
Oh, no? Oh,
No.
well, then you can't change my mind then.
I'm saying, say Muslim countries.
No,
Where
I'm saying
those are
actually
hate
in many of
crimes.
these countries, people are tried for hate crimes for speaking out against Islam. So that they do have blasphemy laws, I know, for that, for example.
You mean in the countries I named?
Yes.
Canada,
Yes.
Britain, Germany, France?
Yes.
I really don't think so.
Okay, so let's, for the sake of exercise, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm not lying to you. After we
Okay.
do this, I actually have this, you can reference these if you want to. And I've lived it.
Okay.
Let's say that's true. Would that eliminate any of those countries from being superior to the United States? If they don't have freedom of speech, if they don't afford that singular right to their citizens?
That would certainly diminish them, in my opinion, as far as freedom is concerned. Because freedom of speech is obviously a big freedom that
Paramount.
that we enjoyed in this country. We enjoy it in this
Yeah.
country.
I'm a conservative, but I absolutely support I hope everyone here speaks out as loudly, as proudly as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And I don't even care if it's offensive. I don't care if it's rude. I believe it should be protected.
And I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a liberal, and I'm against speech restrictions on some university campuses.
Oh, thank you.
I think, yes, I know. When I was a student at Michigan, University of Michigan.
Oh, are you from Michigan?
Well, no, I'm
Okay.
not.
I was born in Detroit, but raised in Montreal. But
Well,
my dad went to U of M.
Well, I went to Ann Arbor, and I was program chairman for my house
Oh.
for a year. And one of the guys I got was a John Birch Society guy.
Okay.
And we treated him respectfully, and I did too. I thought everything he said was nonsense, but we listened, and I
Thank you.
I don't mind that. I think people might be against that today, let's say at Berkeley or some other universities.
Yeah.
That would be prohibited or something. So yeah, I'm in favor of freedom of speech, and I do agree that conservatives shouldn't be restricted.
Yeah.
As they often are.
Oh.
Now, and that includes, let's say, white supremacists and racists. However, they should, and a lot of them have been denied speaking.
Yeah.
However, they should be able to do that in a controlled condition where
If
there's
they wanna host-
there's security.
if they want to host, I'm not a white supremacist or not. I want
know,
to make sure
I
you
know.
understand this.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, good. I probably tipped up by me hugging the black lady earlier. But that being said, if they want to host their own private event and speak, I think they should have the right to do so, just like I think
Okay.
someone should. Yeah.
If you say freedom of speech is more restricted in those countries I named, Canada, Britain,
It's not a
Germany,
right.
France,
It is
it's
not a
a
right.
right. That would diminish them as far as best or equal
Oh,
to the U.S.
look at that! We found some common ground. Can I get a high five?
Yeah, high five.
We both agree freedom of speech is important.
However, there's other things. I mentioned the economic situation. I think these other countries have a better balance between capitalism and socialism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our country has a mixed economy. We have
true.
We have market free enterprise, but it's regulated, and we have
Sure.
a great deal of social programs, and like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. That balance is found in all these other countries too. They also have free enterprise to a certain extent, but they also have the social programs. I think the U.S. is lesser than those countries because its social programs are not as good as, say, Great Britain and France and
Sure.
Germany, which have better health care, for instance, in Canada.
Incorrect.
Well, I really think they're better than our. Yes.
Incorrect.
Okay, well, say what you want.
I have to make sure that I understand. We disagree. Well, first off, at this point, you're now just saying in that facet they're superior with the social programs because we both agree they can have all the social programs. If they don't afford freedom of speech, they
Well,
cannot be a better country.
And I think these countries are better in that regard.
In that
than
re- just
than
in
the
that
US.
regard, yes, okay.
In that regard, yes.
Right.
And I would say that's a pretty significant difference.
Well, I would disagree. So the only, as a matter of fact, the standard when people say that socialized healthcare is better, it comes to a subjective poll when people are asked if they're satisfied with their healthcare. That's how Michael Moore said Cuban healthcare was better than American healthcare. Remember in Sicko? Everyone was parroting that for years.
I remember that.
Canadian healthcare Europe. You look at the mortality rates; they're much higher. You look at the
it is.
wait times; they're much higher. Of course, not to mention we have the highest wage in the industrialized world outside of Luxembourg, a country of 600,000 people. So we have higher wages.
I
we
would
have higher
disagree with
standards of
that.
living.
I would disagree with that.
We do.
A lot of European countries have good wages on average for their people. The most
Statistically,
successful,
the United
happiest
States has the
countries
highest wage in the world outside of Luxembourg.
per capita. Per capita highest wage.
Highest wage.
Okay.
Number one economy, highest wage. And here's something else to consider, right? I'm from Canada, right? I was raised in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If the United States wanted to take over Canada, what time is it right now? You have a watch on a watch.
I do.
What time is it?
It's 3:12.
3:12. By 4:12, they could take Canada, right?
Yeah.
Well, we agree on that.
Yeah.
They couldn't, we have a
If
few
they
guys
wanted-
in
if
propeller
they
plane.
wanted,
Yes. And I love Canada for a lot of different reasons, but certainly I would not say it's anywhere near the equal of the United States.
In
and,
what? Healthcare?
In all facets, but
No,
that one
no.
too as well. But hold on one second. Let me finish what I'm saying. Let's change one thing. Canada, you have to protect your own borders. Go. Europe, go. Sweden, go. The United States foots the bill. You can look at what's paid into NATO. So not only do we have better, when you look at objective parameters for healthcare, and I'll get to that again in a second specifically with Canada, but we also innovate more. There's more medical research here, there's more clinical trials, more drugs coming out of here than anywhere in the world, not to mention we provide national security for the entire industrialized free world. If you remove that, all of a sudden, people can't have the same kind of social welfare programs.
Now, on scientific research, the amount our government spends on scientific research has been decreasing over the years. And the contrary to that, the amount
There's
spent
more in the
Britain
private.
and
I'm talking
Germany
about in
and
this
other
private
countries-
space. We do more in the private space, not only the government space, but more in the private space than any of these other countries. It's not even close.
Well, I can't disagree with that.
Right, and that's a good thing, right? It benefits those countries.
Yeah, we do more private research.
Right.
Well, it benefits.
Which subsidizes their
benefits
socialized
the,
program.
the companies mostly, and there's a secondary benefit to the population of the United States for jobs because it creates jobs.
Right. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to have socialized healthcare if not for us innovating and creating modern medicine. Now, and then as far as, so you take that, you go, oh, okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of a different picture. The wages are lower, for example, in Canada overall. Highest marginal tax rate in my province of Quebec, I think, is about 52%. And it was actually, wait times were so bad in Canada. In Quebec, there's a Supreme Court case in 2006, I believe, Chouy versus Quebec, where it was a doctor actually taking cash to provide patients with care, and you weren't allowed to do that at the time. And he was put out of business. And the Supreme Court said it's a violation of human rights to not allow people to pay for privatized care in the face of death in these waiting lines. And now they allow privatized care in Canada. So they're going our way. They're actually allowing for more privatization because it's a disaster.
They're allowing more privatization.
Yeah, it was declared it was a violation of human rights to force someone into socialized health care.
And that's perfectly okay with me. I think that's an improvement. However, as far as overall health care for all the population, Canada and Great Britain and Germany and France are better because we have great health care for the wealthy, for the upper middle class, even the lower middle class. But for working class and poor people, our health care system is really bad.
It's still better than those
So,
countries you mentioned as far as survival rates,
I don't-
as far as
I don't think
treatment
so.
of terminal illnesses.
No,
Yes, it is.
I think the statistics would disagree with you.
They don't.
I've read statistics. People are happier. They have lower infant. I'm not. That's just one idea. They have lower infant mortality. They have.
No, they don't.
They have better health statistics in terms of cholesterol, things like that, than our country. So their healthcare system is working better, and in that regard. Also, they have better social security systems. Ours is you're just hanging on. In those other countries, the European countries, Japan, Great Britain, Canada, they have a better what you call the
Social
goal.
safety net?
Social safety net, yeah. Social safety net, yeah.
Again, they have a lot more free money to spend when we foot the bill for security. The United States didn't foot the
Okay.
bill security-wise. But that being said, for the objective
That is
parameters,
true. That is true.
Okay.
We pay our military. What is it? We pay more for defense than the top 15 other countries combined.
yeah, we contribute more to NATO than anyone else. It's not even close.
That's true too.
They're not upholding their end of the bargain.
So if I know, I agree with that. They're not paying the percentage of their GDP that they should. Some are moving up now to that. They're
spending it on social safety nets.
Trump has started to threaten them.
Isn't that a good thing?
Well, I
Don't you want to reduce the military-industrial complex and force everyone else to be able to protect
I
themselves?
think they should be paying their share.
Okay, good.
I'm aware of that.
You're a very reasonable person. I appreciate it, even though we disagree.
Well, I think we agree on a lot of specifics.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about your major premise.
But it
That
seems
the
like we
very
agree
best
with the
country-
premise.
I think if I was a German I think a German would say my country is just as good as the U.S. or
But they'd be
Great
wrong.
Britain. And he'd have the reasons, and a Canadian would have the reasons. I really think so.
I don't think they have any reasons. And to go back to the one thing, healthcare, as you mentioned. By the way, I will agree with you.
Well, you're
Social
awfully
Security is a
dogmatic.
disaster.
You're awfully
No,
dogmatic.
I'm not. Social Security is a disaster. Like Medicare, Medicaid. I would agree with you. Our social programs here are not very good. And I also don't think they're very good in Canada.
Good.
I don't think they're good across the board. I don't think they're ever as good as
you agree with me
privatized
about
care.
that.
Yes.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
but you mentioned them as sort of a blended economy. You mentioned Medicare, Social Security, and I would say those are examples of abysmal failures, which we agree with. They're not very good. As far as healthcare, again, this is very interesting. You said people are happier. Well, people were happier in Cuba with their healthcare than the United States. That doesn't mean it's better healthcare. People were happier in Venezuela 4 years ago.
I didn't think they knew the alternative.
That's the point. There we go. The alternative is far better
They
here.
were subjected to censorship of information, press censorship, educational
I
censorship.
hate to cut this short, but I actually do have to go to an event here
Okay.
coming up. What was your name again, sir?
Stephen.
Steven. I'm Steven as well. Steven Crowder. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Steven. Hey, I really hope you fellows was productive and a good civil discussion. I really enjoyed your company.
Okay.
Thank you, Steven. Hey there, YouTube viewer. If you like this video, watch another one of our videos or subscribe, hit the notification bell. Those don't really mean anything anymore today in YouTube. I would say hit a like with a thumbs up, but that might be gone, or comment below, but that most likely will be censored. So bookmark the page. Of course, if you're using Google Chrome, they'll find a way to fuck with your bookmark. So just join up at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. That's louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. You get a hand-etched mug and you get access to the full daily 1-hour show, and you're not beholden to Susan Wojcicki /Clint Howard.